I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
And good morning all, you're listening to Bound for Glory on SYN, SYN's only AFL show. Awesome game last night, we've got an awesome week of footy ahead. First I should introduce myself, my name's Ben Kazupi.
I'm Jordan Whitty.
I'm Ethan Meldrum.
I'm Pralab Gupta.
I'm Damon Jackman.
Boys, last night the Sydney Swans, they managed again to fall asleep at the wheel, but they quickly got themselves back on track. Fast finishing Cats. Which one of these teams, the Swans, are they a top four side?
I think at their best they are. They showed last night that they've got the pace and skill to tear teams apart, especially in first quarters. Their last three games, the SCG, they kicked 23 goals, one combined in the first quarter, which is an amazing stat. Geelong, I think, fell asleep in the first quarter, which was probably the reason they lost in the end, because their fight back in the last three quarters was pretty intense. What do you guys think?
Well, considering Geelong won every quarter, aside, the first quarter won the game for the Swans. The Swans, I think, as I've said, they're the most deceptively quick team in the league, but with injuries to players like Rowan and Parker, I think that they're missing. Aside from that, playing, they have Armstrong, they have Hanbury, and they have Jetta. They're Jets and they're fast footballers, but I think they're really missing towards the end of the game that pace. And I think if they had maybe Rowan or Parker to bring on as a sub, Everett did a great job last night kicking that goal. But aside from that, Sydney are really lacking that burst of pace just at the end to get them over the line.
Yeah, look, I think Sydney, to me, are a top four side, but they probably aren't a top four final side. So I still think they have a time to actually, I guess they need a bit more hardened bodies out there, they need a bit more experience, and ultimately they have fallen asleep twice in a row, and that's something that they do need to address. But I guess, given the senior players will probably be returning soon, it's probably something they can address now.
Well, they need to rectify it before the finals, especially. I mean, they can't afford to go to sleep in the last quarter of the finals.
Well, Parker's back in 6 or so weeks, isn't he? So he should be right for finals. But I was really impressed by their hardened bodies, as you mentioned, Pralab, in the first quarter, with Jack, Bolton, Kennedy, just all winning clearances, and Mumford as well. He had 2 or 3 clearances in the first quarter alone, which was just really impressive. I reckon, provided they don't come up against Collingwood at any point, because they'd likely be at the MCG, where they just can't play well, I think maybe they should make the preliminary finals, I would have thought. But grand final at the MCG, I don't think they really have a shot at it.
Do you think these fade-outs are physical, them running out of gas, or is it a bit psychological? Because you notice their attack on the ball does sort of subside a little.
Well, I noticed Geelong lifted a lot through the second quarter. Their intensity really, really did increase. Players like Kelly and Bartel really started to stand up. I'm not sure, really. Sydney are a good side, and I think Longmire will drill it into them to start playing consistent four-quarter footy. But at the moment, their first quarters are just really dominant. Like, they would tear apart any team in the competition the way they're going at the moment.
And just the numbers they get around the ball, as you said, the clearances, obviously the ruck work of Mumford getting his own ball, and then you've got players, just like Keefe, Bolton, McVeigh, Kennedy, Grundy, or even Hanbury, McGlynn. It just keeps going back and back and back. They're all contested footballers, and again, we can't keep falling into the trap of thinking they're just a blue-collar side, because they have got that injection of pace now. Tom Hawkins, is there something wrong with him?
His goal kicking, I think there's something wrong with it. He just needs a bit of confidence. Probably needs a game against... Geelong got a good next couple of games, I think, against Gold Coast and Port Adelaide, where he does have a real crack at kicking maybe 5 goals or so in one of those games.
He took 5 contested marks last night, and Sydney only took 9. So there's nothing wrong with his marking. I'd suggest
there's nothing wrong with his marking.
Confidence in front of goal more than anything else.
Actually, it's something I noticed a couple of times, that him and Podsiadly kept leading to the same space, and they ended up smothering each other a couple of times. But again, I guess that happens on the SCG because it's a real confined space. again, the senior players of Geelong brought them back into it. Bartel threw himself behind the ball in the last quarter.
Bartel was playing behind the ball in the first quarter. Like he went back to try and stop the bleeding. And I noticed the commentators noted that it's a sign of experience more than anything else for someone like that to realise what the game's going like and put himself behind the ball in an attempt to stop what was pretty much an onslaught. So it was good from Jimmy Bartel.
I think he has permission to play just about anywhere nowadays, whether it's midfield.
Jimmy Bartel is above structure.
Whether it's midfield, or full back or full forward, wherever he can go to stop the bleeding or change a game and win it for Geelong, he's fantastic at that role. Corey Enright was good last night, I thought, off half back. Chapman kicked a good couple of goals in the last quarter.
Chapstick.
The chapstick.
His petrol tank has got to be about empty. Like he's got to be close to done.
Yeah.
Selwood last night as well. And Josh Hunt, I thought, played really well as well. His kicking, especially that goal he kicked late, was really impressive.
I think with Selwood, I think that was the reason why they were out of the game. He was the only one playing against the Sydney midfield at one point. It was a bit like 300. He was the only one leading the charge against a horde of Swans midfielders. It was little. I think that's the thing probably Chris Scott noted to them at quarter time. The other midfielders are guys you do know that Selwood can't do it all himself, and they've lost the contested ball I think in nearly every game this year, the Cats. So I think that's something that really needs to get looked at because Geelong aren't a side to go, we'll let that go and that'll come together. I think Geelong, understand that if there's any chance of making top four now, they need to start pinching a couple of games that they shouldn't win. And
just to change topic, just a quick point. I noticed we were talking about Ben McGlynn before. He's fast becoming one of my most hated players. I just don't like his face very much.
He's fast becoming one of my favourites, actually.
I don't know.
On football ability, he's a great footballer, but just something about him just makes me really angry.
Does he need to wear a paper bag? Is that what you're saying?
He's moving into the mould of Hayden Ballantyne and Stephen Milne, I think. I think he's becoming one of those really
punchable faces.
Punchable what-a-head faces, but like quite a talented footballer. Like he's a good footballer. He kicked 2 goals in the first quarter last night and really set up the Sydney first quarter. But just the way he goes about it just makes me want to hurt him. I don't understand. It's something that I really need to work out.
And guys, we've got a text in from Strawn's side. Last night's game was sadly over-umpired. They need to be the solution, not the problem. Agreed. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, agreed.
Let's have a look at the free kick count here, shall we?
I don't think you can really justify bad umpiring on free kick counts.
There were a couple, that 50-metre penalty. Who was that against?
Reed.
Oh, that was awful.
That was a shocker. That got Geelong in front too, which was really bad time of the game, I think. But there was another one. I can't remember who it was against.
I think there was one in the middle. Sorry to cut, but I think with Corey when he got the ball in the centre and he was just legged and he fell over and it was play on.
It was 22-14 Sydney's way, by the way.
And if you've got any more texts, just text us in on 0427 767 767.
Do it.
Yeah, we've got a massive show today. We've got Jaryd Cachia from the Norwood Football Club, a former Carlton rookie, interviewed by our own Sophie Shaw, new addition to the team. And we'll be back after these SYN messages.
Klingan pub, vi chodpu which kupdach mutai which vi sachnis.
The Klingonian ambassador would like you to know that he has a live cat in his pants.
Jikup bach ji.
And he enjoys it.
Pavam wab jub bi it willap. Dach 90.7 duck cheli.
The Klingonian ambassador would like to add that you should listen to the Sci-Fi Hiker's Guide to the Galaxy, available on SYN 90.7 from 3 p.m. until 4. That or... Okay, I'll be completely honest, I have no idea what this guy's saying.
Kapwach.
Get cereal!
Slept in this week?
This is what you missed. I just kept fiddling and fiddling. If you know any guitarists, and I know plenty, they love to fiddle.
Fastidious.
Fiddle, fiddle, fiddle with their parts.
Really are.
Their guitar parts.
Can MPH, do any wrong? He's just the most amazing human being alive.
Wait, what are we calling it?
MPH.
MPH. He sounds like a talkback radio station.
Get cereal. Get cereal.
Get cereal from 6 a.m. weekdays only on SYN.
Mary doesn't take coffee first thing.
Welcome back. Now, what we're going to discuss right now is, I guess, how important a winning culture is to an AFL club. So a few weeks ago, we discussed the importance of creating a competitive league in the AFL. What the ultimate measure of competitiveness is premiership success. And the way the AFL is structured is that every team theoretically has access to the same talent pool, the high draft picks, and over time, they should be able to challenge for a premiership. And that's the way the process works. The team rebuilds, they start challenging, and one day they will challenge for the flag. But some clubs, and some of them are, for example, the Saints, the Bulldogs, Richmond, I guess, more so for the last 20-odd years or so, supporters would know that simply isn't the case. The team consistently goes through various rebuilds, and it's a constant rebuild after rebuild. So what's missing? Is it purely bad luck, bad recruiting, bad personnel, or is there something else at play? I mean, why does Richmond, for example, constantly struggle to take the next step and crumble when they are often close to finals? What's wrong with Melbourne? Why are the Saints and Bulldogs constantly failing at the biggest stage? So I guess the issue is, how important is a winning culture to the success of a football club? And in my view, I think it's very important. I'm going to give a few examples from, I guess, Kevin Sheedy. So I was reading his autobiography a few weeks ago, and he basically gave two examples where in 1983, where Essendon was smashed by Hawthorn in the grand final, during the best and fairest, he actually publicly ripped into the players, and I think it caused a massive uproar at the club. But he basically said they were having too good a time and they needed to hurt a bit more, and that performance was unacceptable. And I guess the Bombers went on to win the premiership the next year and the year after. So in 1999, the sort of year where I think every Essendon supporter wants to forget, Essendon obviously lost to Carlton.
It's a great year.
It was a terrible year. I mean, I honestly don't even know why I'm bringing this up. But they did lose that year, and I think Hurd and Sheedy felt that the players were simply not hurting enough. So what they actually did is they forced every player to attend the grand final, and after that game, all the players...
Tell you what, that would have been great to watch.
Oh, well, watching Carlton lose is always good.
Also watching Carlton beat Essendon in the prelim was pretty good.
I knew I should never brought this up.
Can we just get on with it?
Yeah, so anyway, so the next season Essendon went on to win what is largely regarded as one of the most dominant seasons of all time. And for me, it's always about not accepting the mediocrity, and that's why I see Greater Western Sydney working towards. It's not about, we only lost by 100 points. We got a bit better. It's about, we have to win, and we can beat every single team on the day. So, I mean, for Melbourne, for me, the whole tanking culture that developed there, and it's been publicly semi-acknowledged by at least Bailey that, that's something what they did do. That's something that I feel has scarred the club and something that has stopped them from actually creating a culture of success. St Kilda, they were unlucky to some extent, but that's all we heard from the Saints, that, it was a bounce away. But you look at their off-field culture, you look at the fact that they haven't won a premiership for so long, I think ultimately they often didn't, whilst they were obviously seeking premiership glory, they often were looking for excuses. It was all about accepting, yes, we almost won it, but we didn't.
So are you sorry, Pralab, are you saying that one very loose 16-year-old girl from Frankston was the only thing standing between St Kilda and a flag?
I wouldn't say that, but I think it was a factor, the off-field professionalism that is required. So we look at Melbourne at the moment, where players are out there drinking after games, and something that, as a team, you have to build that team unity and make sure that culture of success works. And, I think Richmond are now starting to change. They've got more of a harder culture in place. They're starting to move along. Saints, they've got a new coaching staff. They seem to have less off-field dramas these days. And it's a lot about it's getting rid of that mental block. And you often draw on history. And, every single time Richmond get to this stage, people go, it's the same thing as last year. And it happens to every single club. And it's all about getting through that mental block. And that's something that's often very difficult to do. So I guess my question to the panel is, how important do you feel a winning culture is to developing a team that can lead to premiership glory? And do some of the clubs which have a lot of premiership success, can they draw on that history to the benefit of their club?
I think even recent history, I mean, you look at Collingwood at 99 and, towards the end of the 1990s, a lot of people had lost that fear for Collingwood when Collingwood were up and about. You saw it last year and, the year before that everyone brought this hate back to Collingwood. It was really intense, and I think it was out of fear, because Collingwood, over the last 2 years, have been a really, really good side. They've won something like 40 games in 2 seasons, and you can credit some of that not only to the professionalism of Mick Malthouse, but I think also the tenature of Eddie Maguire as CEO. He said when he first came into the meeting to go for the job, he said, I want people to fear Collingwood again. And, he's not only done a great job at, creating a a great marketing deal for Collingwood, to get all their supporters back on board, to get the members. He's created an image of it's us against them, and that's their membership campaign, and that's created something internally within the group that, everyone hates us, so we need to go out and prove that image of Collingwood that we've created.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's the off-field personnel is often as equally important as the players themselves, because they are out there to make sure the club has the facilities and the ability to actually train and develop these players as well. So I think it's very important to get the right people, which is why I'm often a big fan of clubs that are struggling to poach people from successful clubs who have been part of that premiership success, or at least building a successful club.
On the flip side, I do agree with you about Richmond. I think it is their culture that stopped them from making finals so far, and the fact they haven't been very good. But like teams that aren't necessarily in the best 8 in the league have made and performed far above their ability. Like North Melbourne in 2008, we made a preliminary final with a list that people said was terrible. Richmond, their list has always been pretty bad, but this year, I think, with added players and a culture that, Hardwick's trying to instill in the group, which is that, near enough is not good enough, which seems to have been the theme with Richmond over the last however many years. I think it's a good thing, and I think it's a positive step, and that should probably see them make finals. And that's a changing culture, and that's proving your argument.
Do you think it's got to do with drafting as well? Like with Richmond, they're always finishing on the cusp of the 8 and finishing 9th, and they're not really being sort of given the top draft picks to really draft the top players.
So it's all about luck at the draft.
Well,
do you think it
doesn't
it's
even
a factor?
Need to be a top draft pick, because Richmond did have top draft picks, and they got Oakley, Nichols, and Tambling, who unfortunately didn't show anything.
How good would Richmond be at the moment with Franklin at full forward?
Yes, and Rewalt. Imagine that.
And Rewalt.
Yeah,
I think they had 5 picks in the top 20 at one stage in that 2004 draft where they had Deledio, which was nuts.
It's picks lately like Martin, who we can probably say at this stage should have gone number 1 on exposed form, and
Cochin
and Conker even at 6 in the last couple of years. He's looking like a really solid player off half back. Players like that, it's a change from the drafting horrors that are Tambling and Oakley Nichols, and their culture is changing. It's changing with a new coach. It's changing with the players that are coming into the club, and they're on an upward what's the word? Upward trend, I suppose.
Yep.
I think high drafting is a myth. Actually, the Sydney Swans, they haven't bottomed out. Example. They've made 13 final series in the last 17 years. Yes, top drafting is that top end class. That if you have a side of decent surrounded players and you get those top draft picks to add to that, then yes, it works. But the Sydney Swans have never really needed that.
Well, you look at their best player, or their ex-best player, probably Adam Goods. He's a champion of the game. He was picked 912 in the
he was
preseason rookie draft or some shit.
63 in the preseason draft in 99.
And then, Jude Bolton, where did he come from? Not a top 10 pick.
No, not even close.
And most of their players these days.
Hanbury is like a pick 13. Luke Parker's pick 26.
Was 30.
Yeah, he was pick 30.
30, shit. Wow.
And they're like ex-fringe players as well from other clubs that they've poached and
from winning clubs too.
Reinvigorated.
Their development of players that haven't shown, like Josh Kennedy, that haven't shown as much at their first club is second to none, really.
McLean, your favourite?
Yeah, my favourite. they seem to have really a lot of success with people from Hawthorn, and now Tony Armstrong even from Adelaide.
Tony Armstrong
looked pretty good last night.
Whoa,
ladies and gentlemen.
No, actually, I saw him against Essendon because I was at the game. He's changed his entire, probably worth ethic. He's working so hard off the ball. And when he does have it, he's breaking lines. It's exactly what Sydney have needed.
They do a lot of recruiting from other clubs. Just looking at their bests here, McGlynn is from Hawthorn, Everett is from the Bulldogs, Mike Pike is from another sport, Armstrong is from another club. They're probably the masters at it at this stage. They do it better than anyone else.
Ted Richards as well.
Ted Richards. We could go down that list. Martin Matner was from Adelaide. Who else have we got here? Mumford was from Geelong.
Grundy was off the rookie list.
Reece Shaw was from Collingwood.
Everett.
Yeah. I mean, half their list is from another club. It's ridiculous.
And I think winning culture. You can say with what Richmond and Melbourne, and to an extent, I don't think Carlton you can lump in with that, but it just hasn't worked yet. I think Carlton, if they had more mid-range players when they did drop out with experience, I think, they wouldn't be, and with their injury list, I think they would be up there at the moment, but unfortunately that's not the case. And I think also, at board level, you need someone with Richmond. You've got Brendan Gale there now, and he's, you saw his reactions after the siren to the St Kilda win. He was up, his arms were flailing. Richmond haven't had that leader at the top for a very long time. And we'll be back right after these send messages.
This is an FYI for in-joke, so it's okay if you don't get it.
Did you have an absolute hoot at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival and go and see all of your favourite comedians and some you've never heard of before? Or maybe you missed out and are sad that because the festival has ended, there will not be comedy again in Melbourne until next year. Well, you're wrong. Every time I click my fingers, a local comedian gets a job in retail so they can eat. As more comedy venues close due to lack of popularity, comedians have to walk kilometres and kilometres from their house to the tram stop to their venue just to get fresh laughs. Did you know that there are comedy rooms running in Melbourne every day of the week? When you mistakenly think comedy is just for the comedy festival, like a puppy is only for Christmas, another comedy room dies from laughter starvation. Do you want to be a better person and get more information? Listen to In Joke from 5 p.m. Sundays for all of your comedy needs and for Melbourne comedy's sake.
Get cereal! Slept in this week?
This is what you missed.
A long time ago, galaxy far, far away, there was a boy named Luke, and he didn't want to stay on his backhand dirt of Tatooine in the desert where his uncle made him clean some droids that ran away from the Empire. The black man, Darth Vader, gonna send them far. Gonna get Princess Leia, gonna find her afar, saying Jedi save me from the Death Star, yo. Whoa.
Get cereal. Get cereal.
Get cereal from 6 a.m. weekdays only on SYN.
And you're back on SYN listening to Bound for Glory.
The number one most controversial AFL show on SYN.
Caused by wits.
Thank you.
By default, because there's no one else.
Well, yeah, by default we're everything. We're also the worst show on SYN.
Just taking all categories.
Pretty much.
We've got before we get in more trouble,
Yep.
we've got an interview lined up with Jaryd Cachia.
Cachia.
I got it. Quick catch.
The award-winning, Grammy-winning artists of songs such as TikTok and what else?
Can we not?
Sweet.
It's a little bit of wordplay for you there,
Can
ladies
we?
and gentlemen.
No, someone's put in some hard work.
Yeah,
Sophie Shaw,
sorry, Sophie.
our new member of the team. She, along with Tom Morris, our reporters, have gone out and done some really.
To be
good
fair, that
interviews.
was more of a shot at your pronunciation more than anything.
Yeah, I know. I've
Get to this interview.
All right, let's get to this interview.
Jaryd Cachia, thanks for joining us on Bound for Glory. You spent 2 years on the rookie list at Carlton, delisted at the end of 2011, and you've now signed with the Norwood Football Club for 2012. How is it that you ended up in the SANFL?
Well, I ended up in the SANFL after a long sort of thinking process and decision process. The SANFL is considered by most, a lot of people in the AFL / football industry to be the best football competition outside of the AFL. I had 6 clubs in the SANFL chasing me, and also had 3 or 4 clubs in the Waffle, which is the West Australian Football League, which is also a very good state league competition. But I ended up making my decision to go to Norwood purely based on what I'd heard about the club as a football club and the playing group. After meeting with the football manager and some of the players, I felt that Norwood was the place for me in 2012.
Yeah, and you talked about how the SANFL being such a high standard of competition. Talk me through the differences that you've noticed between the VFL and the SANFL in the 6 months that you've been here.
Yeah, what I've really noticed about the difference in competition is that in the VFL you find that you've got a lot of young kids that were like myself that were on rookie lists or AFL lists and weren't getting games, and a lot of kids that have just been graduated out of the under-18 TAC Cup system, and you wouldn't have a lot of experienced players or older players, as you call it, above the age of 24. So it was really a sort of a 23 and under competition. And what you find over here in the SANFL is you've got players that have come through the club ranks from under 18s all the way through to playing senior footy to the ages of 30 years of age, 30 plus, and they've done between, 10 sample pre-seasons. Their bodies are hardened. They've played at that higher level before. And I just find that the step up in competition is a jump purely because of the people you're playing against each week.
So it's fair to say that the VFL is perhaps the worst competition in Australia?
I wouldn't say it's the worst competition, but I find that if it wants to sort of become a really strong competition, that the AFL needs to look at probably giving, a lot more money back to the VFL clubs. The SANFL is a privately run business by the SANFL. And there's a lot more money involved, you can go and earn really good money playing in a really good state league competition in the SANFL, whereas you can't do that in the VFL.
So it's the money and the quality of competition that attracts people like you over here?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yep. And speaking of the VFL, you also came across with fellow Victorian Nathan Batsanis, a 2011 Premiership player from Port Melbourne. Also Michael Newton, who was delisted from the Melbourne Football Club. How do you think the three of you have fitted in so far?
I think we've done pretty well. The club's been fantastic in helping us settle over here in Adelaide. They did as much as they could for us. In terms of the actual playing and sort of finding our feet out in the field, it's probably taking us a bit of time to get to adjust into the style of play of the SANFL and life over here being a SANFL footballer.
You and Batsanis play the same position. Surely you would have come across him at some stage in the VFL?
Yeah, we actually we have come across each other a few times. Actually played on each other last year in the preliminary final where Port Melbourne knocked us off. But he's a very good player, Nathan, and I'm sure he's enjoying it over here.
Now, your coach, Nathan Bassett, who is an ex-Adelaide Football Crows player, he's been known for his quite unique style of coaching. How have you adapted to that?
Yeah, I've sort of heard bits and pieces about Bass before coming over here, but it was all positive, and people they sort of see him as a bit of a different, quirky individual. But I find that he's a very fair coach, a very honest coach, and with 200 plus games of AFL experience behind him, he definitely knows what he's talking about.
So how does he compare to someone like your ex-coach in Brett Ratton?
I think it's just the way Bass's, what his strength I feel is as a coach is his knowledge of the game and the way he communicates with players. Yep. Rat's had a great knowledge of the game, but sometimes his communication with players was something that he definitely needed to work on. Whereas Bass treats all players equally and fair. Doesn't matter if you're the first kid playing his league game or the big boom recruit for the year, you're all treated equally and you all get the same opportunities.
So, as a rookie at Carlton, you felt that Ratton perhaps didn't give you as much opportunities as you deserved?
Yeah, I definitely felt that a little bit, especially in my second year. I was playing some good football there and thought I deserved a chance at AFL level just to see where I was at to improve. I knew I could play excellent footy at VFL level, but I wanted that crack at AFL football and yeah, wasn't given that opportunity.
Yeah. You've gone from starting on the ball each week for the Norwood Footy Club, but you've now made the move out to the wing. Was that a personal decision, or did Nathan Bassett believe that you could perhaps play a better role there?
I think it was sort of a bit of both between us. So we had a lot of quality on ballers, and Bass liked the idea of an on-baller going and rotating through the wing position. And then through injuries and the loss of James Aish to the under-18 state side the last sort of 3 weeks, I found myself playing majority on the wing, which I've enjoyed. It's something I'm not really used to as a player, but it's a really good position out on the ground, and yeah, I'm just there playing my role for the team.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that Bass knows what he's talking about. You guys are sitting 9-1 halfway through the season. Are you guys starting to feel the pressure going into the second half of the year? You were premiership favourites after round 2 or 3. How are you guys feeling now?
Yeah, I think there's always that added pressure going in, being the top side. You got opposition sides coming out each week trying to knock you off and doing what they can. I think there's a lot of excitement around the club that we, as a club, must keep a lid on and keep it in-house so that we do feel that we have got a side that can go deep into finals. So it's just about the old cliche in football, taking it week by week. So that's the main thing that we focus on.
Yep, and your success has been contributed to your full ground press, which obviously other teams are really struggling to tackle this season. Is it a system of play that you think can continue into the final series, or do you think that opposing teams will, eventually get on top of it by then?
I think that as a group, it sort of took us probably 3 or 4 rounds in to really realise how dominant our press can be, and I think it is definitely something that we can take into the rest of the year, and sides are struggling with it a little bit over here. But it's mainly with the press, it's mainly up to us. It's our attitude of how hard we press against sides and opposition to keep the ball in our forward 50.
Yep. All right, well, thank you, Jaryd, for joining us on Bound for Glory FM, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you.
Sensational interview there with Jaryd Cachia. Thanks to Sophie Shaw there. She did a fantastic job. Boys, you just said Brett Ratton wasn't a very good communicator. What do we make of that?
Scoop!
I think it's a pretty well-known...
Nah, scoop.
It's footy's worst-kept secret, isn't it?
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
He won't be coaching them
I'm not going to go there. I was about to drop a bombshell, but I'm not going to go
I don't think Ratton will be there this time next year.
Oh, really?
Really?
At Carlton.
For what reason?
He'll be terminated.
Why is that? Do you reckon we're not going to make the 8?
No, I think he'll make the 8, and he'll be given half of next year, and you simply won't take that next step, and he'll be sacked.
Half of next year?
Half of next year.
So you won't give him another chance to make top 8, top 4?
Yeah, I think...
You'll be given half the year, and Carlton will, I think, next year
Hasn't he been
fall away.
re-signed for an extra
He
season?
has.
I'm pretty sure he has, yeah. Yeah.
But
So, they'd have to pay him out.
But it'd have to be a termination clause in there, you'd think, in case he does...
In case he's crap.
Yeah, because
I mean, if Carlton follow a similar trajectory that they are following this year, I don't think he will see out next season.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just think many people aren't taking injuries into the debate here. I think they're missing the obvious, that if they had a lot of their players in and playing, and Collingwood and West Coast have had injuries, but their players have had the chance to have an exposure, whereas Carlton was still developing their plays, like getting Carazzo and Scotland to an A grade, whereas Collingwood's already there, and then they could have afford to have younger players in, where Carlton couldn't afford to have that because they were still establishing their best 22. So I just think that hasn't been taken into account.
I maintain that Andrew Carazzo is Carlton's most important player at the moment.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep, absolutely.
And we'll be back right after these SYN messages.
Get cereal! Slept in this week?
This is what you missed.
We're playing the forums, so... that's a strange.
Yeah,
like, the amount of moustaches that will be in that one place.
I need to build new bike racks, especially for this show.
You know what happens when cold water touches you when you're asleep? You wake up. You know what happens when carbon monoxide hits you when you're sleeping? You die, Cat. I've had to move about a metre away from the mine.
Get cereal. Get cereal.
Get cereal from 6 a.m. weekdays only on SYN.
Did you know that Paul McCartney from the Beatles actually died in 1966 and was replaced by the Paul McCartney lookalike with surgical adjustments done to his face?
No way.
Yes way. The proof of this is placed in many of the Beatles' other albums. You can see on the front of Rubber Soul that they're looking down into Paul's grave, or on the cover of Magic Mystery Tour when Paul is the only one dressed in black. Also, on the great track number 9, if you play it backwards very slow, you can hear them say, "Paul is dead. Paul is dead."
That sounds like some very well substantiated evidence.
I believe so. Sadly though, George Harrison was unable to do an interview with us.
If you want more awesome conspiracy theories, listen to The Conspiracy Campfire.
1 p.m. Saturdays on
SYN.
SYN Radio.
And we're back on SYN, and Ethan's now going to just take us through this head-high debate that's currently going on.
Well, it's a big debate, the whole head-high contact issue. We had Jack Darling's report against Carlton last week. Looked very...
blatant.
It looked a bit blatant, where Scotland tackled him around the waist, and he seemed to rock his head back, whether his hand connected to his face. It looked like it did, but that's how he got off. But I think that leads into a bit of a debate about the whole head-high thing. I noticed last night, I think in the first quarter alone, Jude Bolton and Joel Selwood going into packs practically head first, like just bullying their way through. And I'm not really convinced on the whole thing as an issue. players such as Luke Shuey, I got David Armitage in there, who have won heaps of free kicks this year, like averaging over 2 a game. Ashton Hams, Scott Selwood. What do we think of the tactic? Basically, like going in head first, or at least initiating head-high contact.
Firstly, I mean, there's a lot of debate about Luke Shuey and, his supposed all this tactics he's taking. I think what a lot of people don't realise is he's actually a bloody good footballer and he doesn't need to do it. He's so good without the tactic, and I think it's lowering his opinion in people's eyes when he could be so much more without this tactic. I mean, my opinion is that he doesn't need to do it. Joel Selwood, he's whatever, he's a great player, but I think Shuey is an immense talent who doesn't need to do this.
I just think, because with players and the compensation with concussion and stuff, we're going to get into some serious legal grey areas when you've got players going for free kicks and they're going to end up hurting themselves of their own volition.
Will it take a broken neck for something to be done about this?
Well, you hope not.
But I hope not either, but will it come to the point where it's going to have to be that?
Well, no, I think the AFL, there's always a trend before the AFL looks at something. There's always the first media wave.
So there have to be several broken necks?
No.
That's what we advocate here, broken necks.
Broken necks.
Broken necks and slander here.
Well, the AFL are pretty reactionary, though. So.
No, there's always, when they change something, there's media wave number 1. They never look at it. Media wave number 2, then they have to come out and have a position. When there's a third media wave of when it happens, then they do something. Exactly the same with the sliding. Goods, then you had Thomas, and then it happened the week after with, who was it? Walker, and then there you go.
Twice on Surgeon as well.
Yeah. Rule. That's the AFL.
Lot, does that Jacob Surgeon? He's a poor man.
But Joel Selwood in particular really does open up like the health debate where he does practically just go in head first. And we've already had Daniel Bell, Scott Stevens, who have requested compensation because they've had long-term effects from concussion, whether it's brain damage or whatever. I think it sets a bad example, most notably for junior footballers as well, because, I mean, any Geelong or Sydney supporter who was, like, say, 12 years old last night, their inspiration is, say, Joel Selwood, and you see him diving into a pack head first. That kid might go, I'm going to play like Joel Selwood. And we've seen junior footballers recently been around the news who have had more head-high injuries recently than in the past few years.
There was that case in, I think, Ballarat in girls' footy, it was. That girl that took a bump to the neck or something and had a stroke on the field and had to learn to walk again or something like that. And Ricky Nixon organised a charity event for her, which is very nice of Ricky. But, I mean, that's an example of that. And then also Nathan Prince from the Western Jets, who died on field, which is tragic. More publicised now than ever.
I think also what will possibly be the counter to that will be that the view it's creating. Like, you go to the football, people are now yelling out to say, "Oh, he's a ducker. He's a ducker." Will kids want to be known as? I'm sure coaches, they don't necessarily say go out and, get free kicks, but they probably turn a blind eye to it and say, if you're going to end up winning the ball, it doesn't really matter. Because coaches have always tried to exploit rules. That's how you get ahead since the beginning of the game. I just think that pressure will maybe stop some kids.
Yeah, I guess, Ben, just to jump in there, how do you think the best way to deal with it is? Is it that sort of media scrutiny that you're talking about? Is it actually doing it in gameplay where the umpires go, you've ducked in your head, you pay a free kick against that player? Or is it after the match where you report the player and say what you've done is, I don't know, against the spirit of the rule maybe? And
reckless or something, yeah.
Reckless, something like that?
I think it's neither, because I saw, you just call it play on. There was an incident where I saw Rory Sloane from the Adelaide Crows, again, a very talented young footballer.
I love him.
He's
I love him.
He's exciting football. Settle down. He did duck his head, and Jordan Bannister, friend of the show, actually just called it play on, and I think that was the perfect call, because if you reward it, they're going to keep doing it. If you don't reward it, then it's slowly going to work itself out.
I mean, the AFL looks at impact when they're looking at match review, suspensions. So if a player hypothetically ducked into another player and that player got injured seriously, the other player would be, I guess, probably get a few weeks because it's all looked at the impact on the player. And
technically you're right, because the duty of care, that's something that's being assessed when they go to the tribunal now. So maybe that's a good point.
So what's it going to take to reduce these head-high incidents where it's ducking into contests, initiating it with the lowering of the shoulders, bending the knees, all that sort of stuff? What's it going to take? Is it umpires have to crack down like Jordan Bannister, as you mentioned, Ben? Is it to take a rule change where you initiate head-high contact, it's just play on? What's it going to take?
I reckon if the umpires are more in tune with it and watching out for it and don't pay free kicks, I reckon the players are going to think, well, what's the use in doing the tactic? And slowly, I think the tackle will just die out over time.
Yeah, I second that. I think if you don't reward the behaviour, it will probably stop.
I think we can universally agree on that. But I think Jordan's got a segment for us now. What's it about, Jordan?
I'm going to talk about the go-home factor in football because I was lazy this week and didn't come up with anything. But, I mean...
There's hard at work, 9 to 5.
Yeah, I have been working pretty hard.
Your producer's sitting right next to you.
Well, I've admitted to our lovely producer here that I have been very lazy in coming up with ideas for segments, but I did half an hour worth of research last night while I was drinking.
You can't say that. You can't say that.
I wasn't drinking like...
You're drinking water, everybody.
I was, yeah. I didn't say what I was drinking.
You do your best work under the influence, so...
No. Drinking is bad. We cannot say that on this station. We do not condone that.
We do not condone the consumption of alcoholic beverages. A lot of talk about players that have come back, been signing new deals in the last couple of weeks. Patrick Dangerfield is probably the most prolific example of that. He signed a 3-year deal in Adelaide after a lot of speculation about going home to Geelong. He was a Moggs Creek boy or something like that, and he grew up there, and all the talk was that he was going to knock back a deal from Adelaide, who really love him. He's a great player. He signed a new 3-year deal and really rejected the lure of Geelong, who probably would have paid a lot of money to get him to the club. Another example is Travis Boak from Port Adelaide, who hasn't signed a deal at Port just yet. I think he said to Primus he's putting off contract talks to the end of the year. Is that correct?
Well, I think originally he said he'll have it all done by the end of June, like whether he's staying or going, and it's very close to that now, so I don't think that will be going ahead. But what
I mean, in other examples where players have put it off to the end of the year, Scully and Ward both said they wouldn't sign to the end of the year, and they both ended up going to different clubs. I mean, Boak also grew up in Geelong. It seems like a lot of talented footballers come out of Geelong's area, and
they do very good.
Yeah, as Brian Taylor likes to say, it's Michael Turner's football factory down there at the Geelong Falcons. I hate you, Brian.
Scotty Thompson.
Who? What?
Scotty Thompson from North Melbourne.
Yes, another football factory, etc. A couple of years ago, or at the end of 2010, Daniel Wells, who is a West Australian native, he was linked with West Coast. He said in an interview that he almost quit North Melbourne. North Melbourne would have got a really high draft pick for him in that.
That probably would have been the Andrew Gaff pick, wouldn't it?
Potential, yeah, it would have been. Yeah, I'm not so sure we would have picked Gaff, but he did say that the lure of home was tough to knock back, especially for players coming from Western Australia to Victoria. And then last year there was Cyrus Manson from the Bush Leagues in northern Western Australia. all the internet chat was that he was every bit of first round selection. He came down and played for Claremont in the Waffle, and he kicked 8 goals and 10 goals in consecutive games. And he went to the draft camp, and no one wanted to pick him, not even the Western Australian teams, because he just did not want to leave his community up in the bush. It's sad, players like that who could be the next elite talents for the game, who are so bound by their homesickness that they can't come to the biggest and most public league in Australia.
Austin Wanamiri is one.
Yeah, another one. I mean, there's examples upon examples. I mean, my question to you guys is that: do you think the coaches should have a specific question to potential draftees that are outside their home states? Do you think that you'll be homesick enough to leave the club? Because it's a massive financial commitment to draft a player, and a massive commitment for your football club, and to have them turn around after a couple of years and leave is
and to develop them as well, like you put them all through the development. And if they become good players, like what Boak is, it's a massive blow if they want to go home.
Well, yeah, you're right. It does put you back, 3 or 4 years. You have to go and because you get draft pick compensation. You have to go. If you don't get a player, you get a draft pick, and you have to put all that time back into that person. I think with free agency coming in, and players soon, once they reach a certain stage, can go where they like. It's going to become a factor, and I think that's going to be a question that's going to be asked when they do interviews.
Yeah, Look, my view is that it probably isn't as big of a factor as it's being made out. So outside of Greater Western Sydney and Gold Coast, who'd offer a ridiculous amount of money, most of the players we're talking about often come from unsuccessful clubs and teams at the bottom of the ladder. When you're in a successful team, all the players who are from other states don't talk about going home because they're part of that team success. And it's always with the teams who are struggling, that's when this becomes a big issue. So I think if a team's doing well, unless you're not getting opportunities, a player who is from another state will simply not see this as a factor because they're enjoying their footy. So it comes down to enjoying the footy, creating a team culture, and I think that addresses sort of most of the sort of going home factor.
Well, we were having the discussion, I think, not a couple of days ago, that Tom Scully's, the circumstances in which Tom Scully left Melbourne were worse than, worse than Callum Ward, because Cal Ward left, we can say for money, but, it was nowhere near as bad as what Tom Scully did, which, I
think undoubtedly for money in the end. I think all in any job, if you're being paid practically double the money to move interstate, I think everybody in here would take it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
If Sydney, New South Wales offered me, more money to come on we don't get paid on this radio show, but if they offered me money to go to New South Wales and talk about football, then I'd do it.
So they can offer you double of nothing.
Exactly.
In
still get nothing. But
in Scully's case, it was like 5 times nothing. Scully is, and I still struggle to wrap my head around this most days, is the highest paid footballer in this country. That's
this year,
staggering.
At least
more than Israel Folau.
I believe so.
Yes, that's staggering.
But the circumstances in which he left Melbourne, which were and even saying it feels disrespectful. He lied to a dying man who was the president of a club in internal turmoil. The club tanked to get him, and he walked out on them. And that is just, it's an insane amount of disrespect to me. I cannot understand how someone can be so disrespectful to a club, a person, a champion, and just the game of football. Really, it astounds me. It really does.
I think if Boak is going to leave, he should take a word of advice from the whole Tom Scully saga, in that he should be completely transparent with what he's going to do. Because, Tom Scully, he's going to get ripped into by Melbourne players and probably supporters as well.
It's Melbourne versus GWS this weekend, isn't it?
This week,
right.
Yeah.
Blockbuster!
But the fact that he did lie to Jim Stein saying he was committed to the club, he said that he wanted to be a one-club player. I think Boak needs to be open and say, I am considering going home. I cannot guarantee my future at the club next year. And that he's really considering the lure home.
I think that's why Phil Davis has a lot of respect still, because he said mid-year, I am going, and I'm not going to, you guys will get compensation and everything. They get Brad Couch?
Crouch.
No, I
Brad
think
Crouch.
That was separate.
Yeah,
they got compensation.
I wouldn't think they would have gotten a top 2 pick for Crouch. Phil Davis.
I think... No, sorry, I was thinking something else. But Callum Ward as well openly admitted to it, the best and fairest, saying, I'm leaving the club, going to GWS. I think that takes a lot of balls to do that as well.
Yeah, I think the end of the season's fine, but hasn't the coach at Port basically said that Boak will not play senior football if he tells the club that he's leaving?
I think Primus just wants him to make a decision. I think all the articles that I've read based on it have said that Primus is really, really urging Boak to make a decision, to hurry up and tell the club pretty much, because that we saw what happened in the year with Scully. Melbourne were crap. Geelong probably weren't as great when Ablett was making all these decisions and stuff. He's still a great player, but the team would have been a little bit.
Yeah, Mark Thompson, I think, has covered a lot of what influenced, because there was a lot of hostility between him and Ablett. They weren't the best of friends at all in that time. And sorry.
No, you go. I'm good.
We're gonna go to an ad.
Yeah, all right, we're gonna go to ads. Get some ads into you.
Have some.
That's not a Bantosaurus. This is a Bantosaurus.
3 to 4:30, Tuesdays on Sin.
Damn you, Godzilla!
Sin opens its doors to young people of all kinds. Hundreds of schools, youth and community groups come to Sin each year. Our tours, workshops and programs are great for building teamwork, confidence and literacy skills. To find out about our education programs, head to sin.org.au/education or email training@syn.org.au.
Here's what you missed on In Joke this week.
I've been punched in the stomach once, and that was 2 of my friends were
grinding lemon wedges into each other's eyes.
Oh,
because
lovely.
that's what my friends do. And
Life gives you lemons.
yeah, just really grind them in there.
Listen to In Joke from 5 p.m. Sundays on SYN.
Hi, I'm Gary Ablett, and you're listening to Sports Bag 90.7 SYN FM.
SYN, young volunteers from right across Melbourne.
And we're back on SYN after those messages, and I think now we're going to go preview to the rest of the round's games. There are some absolute crackerjacks on in the next
Melbourne
2
GWS.
days.
Oh,
Bouncer! That's the biggest one.
That is a big game.
But today at Eddie had, the Bulldogs take on the Lions. Hold on, I think it's worth more than that. Dogs are a game out of the 8.
So are North.
I know. Is that pretty hard to believe?
Yeah, I know. It's difficult to believe.
Amazing.
Big Niall McKeever there at centre half back for the Lions.
No, I think it'll be Joel Patfull playing key defender role on Jones there, but yeah,
Well, that's where he's named. Tom Campbell for his first game for the Western Bulldogs.
Coming off the rookie list. I think it's going to be actually a close game. I think Brisbane, they've got a good midfield. They've still got Redden, Rich, who's been in good form this year, hasn't really been picked up. Rockcliffe as well, who can push forward. Zorko has been a fantastic recruit, especially for Dream Teamers and Supercoaches out there. I think...
Awesome name too. It sounds like a villain of some description. The evil Zorko.
But I think I'm going to have to tip the Doggies overall, just with the home ground advantage, but Brisbane will push them.
Yeah, I think, especially some of these key matchups, the Dogs up forward need to start. Liam Jones, I think we've said it a few times this year, he needs to start impacting, whether it be, taking marks or creating the contest at ground. He's just not getting to that initial marking contest. They're going to need to find avenues to goal. There's no Will Minson this week, obviously. They're going to be less top-heavy, the Western Bulldogs, so you'll probably see Ace Cordy and the other bloke, Jordan Roughhead. Sorry, there we go. Jordan Roughhead and Ace Cordy, they'll both switch between ruck and playing at full forward. And up the other end, the Lions are going to keep Merritt deep. You wouldn't suggest they'll put him in defence. So, it should be a fairly even contest.
Just on the form of Mitch Wallace, the kid is tearing it up at the moment. He's in some belting form. Quick fun fact, I tagged him for a quarter in under 16s. He got about 14 touches in 3 minutes. Wow. And I was moved off him subsequently. Dogs by a fair bit.
Yeah, Dogs by about 4 kicks.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Dogs as well. I think Jonathan Brown can probably hopefully recapture some of his form from the past few years. Probably hasn't been as good as he has in the past, and hopefully it'll be an interesting matchup with him and Lake, the sort of two veterans out there, if they do match up as stated. But I'll go with, I guess, the Dogs by probably about 3 goals.
Yeah, I think the Dogs by 2. I think Brisbane will push them.
Yeah, I think with the new Beanpole coming in, hopefully you can play a good game as a replacement. As a replacement for Minson, of course, who was suspended for 1 match.
For saying, the most timid of insults. I've said so much worse than that on the football field.
I think the AFL should go down to
I've
suburban.
heard so much worse out of your mouth off air.
Yeah, pretty much.
They should go down into suburban footy and listen to some of the stuff that's said by parents on the sidelines.
Yes.
Not that we condone that either.
No. Not condone stage parents.
But I think the Dogs will win in a close one.
All right, moving on to the twilight game of today, which is the Collingwood West Coast game at the MCG at 4:40.
Oh, looking forward to this.
Match the round.
Yeah, you'd say just because of venue pure alone, if the Eagles can't take that forward press to the MCG, you'd say they can, but if it's not effective, Collingwood should comprehensively get over the top. Some key areas, you'd think Dawes has to play a huge game because Glass is a great shutdown defender and you don't expect Cloak to do too much. In the absence of Pendlebury, Collingwood still have a great midfield, but they're going to have their wits about them and obviously go the other way because the Eagles also have a damaging midfield as well.
Ben Reid's back in to help combat the Twin Towers or the 3 towers in West Coast forward line. They've got a lot of height down there, so an extra tall defender should be good.
Out of these young footballers, especially Collingwood, their midfield has taken the next step. You've got Sidebottom and Blair obviously become near elite footballers. Beams, geez. Yeah. Oh my God, it's ridiculous.
Out of contract. Will he go elsewhere?
No.
Okay, good.
No, because of that winning culture that Prolab.
Exactly right, and the fact that you stay at Collingwood, you'll be looked after afterwards as well.
And Wellingham as well played a very good game 2 weeks ago. But West Coast did push them last year in the qualifying final, I think it was, where they only lost by 12 points in the end.
It was 3 goals in the end, but it was
close.
They were a goal away from really scaring Collingwood in that final.
I'm expecting a similar result. I think both teams are around the same mark they were last year. So Collingwood home ground advantage, I'm going to tip them by about 3 goals.
Yeah, I reckon the Pies by 2.
Yep, I'm going to go with the Collingwood Magpies.
Yeah, I think the Eagles will stick with the Pies for about 3 quarters, but the Pies by about 3 goals.
And it's interesting to see that the news coming out that Mark Lacroix may be able to play then towards the end of this year.
That's huge news.
Yeah.
Huge. Wow, that is amazing.
Was that this morning or yesterday?
No, I think that was yesterday. Yeah. So that'll be a massive injection.
If him and Kennedy get back in, they'll win the flag.
Yeah.
I'm adamant that if it wasn't for injuries, West Coast would be unbeatable on top of the ladder right now.
Moving on nice and quickly, ladies.
I'll say Collingwood. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Jack. All right, cool. Fremantle Essendon tonight over in the West. Our mate Jordan Bannister is going to be umpiring this one. Another big game. Essendon have lost 2 in a row, I believe. They probably need to win this one just to right the ship, steady the ship just a little bit. Ship needs steadying. Have at it, fellas.
Yes, psychologically it's a huge game for Essendon. Again, the June factor kicks in. They haven't won one.
And add another factor, the interstate factor.
The interstate factor, yeah, that's another actually good point. That's
Mixed netball superstar Delolio is back in for Essendon.
Mixed netball.
What was that?
Doesn't he play with our own?
Oh, that's right.
Short?
Yeah, actually, jeez, random.
Were we not discussing this earlier?
Oh, that's right.
Off air. You guys have poor memories.
But, we were focusing on the show.
I don't
Moving on to the show.
Moving
Ben?
on, yes. Interesting. Crozier will be starting for the Fremantle Dockers, a supreme young talent. They've actually named Dustin Fletcher on him, which is, Dustin Fletcher can play on small and tall. The midfield, Ryan Crowley will go to Joe Watson, and you're pretty sure he'll stay with him all night. If Freo...
He may go to Stanton.
Yeah, that's the thing, because if you're an opposition coach, you are more likely to tag Stanton because he's more affected by a tag. But Fremantle will be wary because they're really missing their offensive midfielders like Fife.
As named, they've got 45-kilogram Jaden Pitt on Brett Stanton there, so that will be a bloodbath if it continues. But they really line up how they're named. So
Pavlich on Carlisle looks to be the likely matchup. Very interesting. I think Freo proved they can score against Richmond last week with Pavlich kicking 6, so I reckon they'll get over the line.
Yeah, Freo by about at least 6 to 7 goals. Essendon will get smashed into state again.
Ooh. No, I reckon Essendon by 2 goals. I reckon it's time.
Essendon are good runners, but I think Freo are too experienced over there. They will get the win.
I reckon the Dockers will get up.
All right, true match of the round.
Yeah, game off the round.
Melbourne versus GWS looks to be
Scully Cup.
Interesting contest.
Guys, hear me out on this nickname for GWS's forward line. General Patton and Lieutenant Cameron. Hey, come on now. Those two are going to be champions. I'm going to tip the Giants, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm an idiot.
No, they'll get close. I just think Melbourne will have too much experience. They'll again be there for 3 quarters. I just think Melbourne will pull away. D's by 4 or 5 goals.
Blease got dropped, which I think was a bit ridiculous. But Rowan Bale comes in, very good runner. Should have a good game. Lining up on Scully by the looks of things. But
they'll send Jones to Scully.
No, I don't think they will.
I think they will.
I don't think so.
We can agree to disagree.
I think every player will be on Scully. But Melbourne by about 4 or 5 goals.
I'll tip an upset with the Giants.
I reckon Melbourne should get up in a close one.
And the last game of the round, North Melbourne take on the Crows, the twilight game at Etihad tomorrow afternoon.
We're going to get massacred.
If North Melbourne don't learn how to run defensively, it's going to be a very long end to the season. They've taken out their one tagger in Levi Greenwood, and they've brought in Liam Anthony.
Don't know what.
I was a bit surprised at that, actually.
Yeah. Liam Anthony tagged Chris Judd in a pre-season game, and he did a fantastic job. And whether Brad Scott's thinking along those lines, because North Melbourne struggle to have a player who can run all day.
Well, Trent Spawn was a good tagger. He actually tagged Hurd out of the game a few years ago. So it doesn't necessarily make him a good player.
Again, that's the point that I'd make. But it's an experiment that he's got to try because he's the only player that can probably run with Scott Thompson all day.
Pick 3 and contested marking superstar Lachlan Hanson comes back in after a prolonged period in the VFL. Good to see him back. He'll want to, he'll want to do something. He'll want to do something.
Yeah, it would be nice.
I'm going to tip Adelaide.
Yep, Adelaide.
Yeah, they're Crows by about 8 goals.
Midfield 2 experience, so Adelaide by about 10 goals, I reckon.
Yeah, Crows also all about 6 goals.
Yeah, and I think that's all we have time for today.
I'm going to plug some stuff before we go, though.
Yeah, let's follow Sarge Supercoach on Twitter. All your Supercoach needs. Bound for Glory News, our new news service coming out soon.
It's new news.
Yeah, we'll plug that on the internet.
Yes. Follow us on the internet. We have a Twitter page. It's at Bound for Glory FM. Follow us on Facebook. It's Bound for Glory.
Or Bound for Glory News.
Yeah, fantastic. And a friend of the show, Kit Harvey, has a show on SYN. It's called Bring on the Sunshine. It runs at 10 p.m. on Sundays.
Fantastic show.
Yeah, listen.
Friday.
Get some listeners on that.
I think that's enough for today, boys. It's coming to the end of the hour.
Yeah, get around us.
There we go. There's a sultry
bit
tunes.
of Careless Whisper to bleed us out.
With Rex Hunt.
This has been Bound for Glory. We'll be back next week. Catch you later.
What is this?